Welcome to Journey Through Time, where we gently explore ideas that stretch across centuries and worlds. Tonight, we'll follow a question that may have hovered quietly at the edge of your thoughts. What if Earth itself is a test? This isn't about quick answers. It's about shifting how you see the world around you. Imagine life not as random, but as something designed to measure choices, endurance, and the way we treat one another. Perhaps it's guided by a higher intelligence, ancient powers once called gods, or even future humans, running an experiment across time. We feel it sometimes, moments when events line up too perfectly, when a stranger appears just when needed, when challenges seem engineered to shape who we become. Across ages, people have wondered if there's purpose hidden behind coincidence. Before we go deeper, take a moment to notice your own surroundings. Where are you listening from? Is it day or night, familiar or strange? Wherever you are, this quiet conversation links us together. If you enjoy these slow explorations, consider liking and subscribing to Journey Through Time. It helps more people find these reflections and drift into a calmer space for the evening. Earth as a test may sound strange, but thinking about it can reveal new angles on life. Tests aren't only classrooms and papers. They're also about how we adapt under pressure, how we behave when no one is telling us what to do. Maybe every person faces a unique version of this test, tailored in ways we don't even notice. If Earth truly resembles a test, its conditions look finely tuned, yet deliberately challenging. Our planet sits in a narrow orbit, neither too close nor too far from the sun, where water can flow, seasons can form, and life can persist. Its tilt gives us balanced seasons. Its large moon stabilizes rotation and creates tides that stir oceans. These conditions appear almost like a carefully prepared environment. Across history, many cultures sensed this. Ancient myths speak of gods weighing hearts, spirits evaluating courage, or cosmic forces shaping destiny. Whether in Egypt's weighing of the heart, Plato's immortal soul tested through earthly life, or Confucian self-cultivation, the core idea repeats. Life is not random, but evaluative. In this perspective, survival is only one part of the exam. Morality and cooperation become equally important. Do we act with compassion under pressure? Do we create fair systems in times of scarcity? Do we rise beyond instinct to build communities that last? These questions echo through every civilization. The planet itself seems designed to probe our adaptability. Disasters, storms, droughts, earthquakes arrive as if timed to test resilience. Scarcity of resources forces decisions about sharing, trust, and fairness. Even opportunities have built-in costs, compelling us to choose and reveal our priorities. This is not a static quiz. It's an evolving test of character, endurance, and collective intelligence. Civilization magnifies the challenge. Small groups test individual survival. Cities test large-scale cooperation. Trade, laws, and technology create new dilemmas. How to balance freedom with order, wealth with equality, and power with accountability. These stress points act like modules in a grand curriculum, each revealing how we respond to complexity. At the heart of this scenario is uncertainty. We have no rulebook, no clear grading system. Every decision feels like improvisation. That ambiguity itself could be intentional, ensuring authentic behavior rather than rehearsed answers. In that way, daily life, every kindness, betrayal, and act of persistence becomes data. And through it all, suffering functions like a hidden instructor. It arrives without warning, teaching empathy, testing courage, and shaping societies. Hardship pushes invention and cooperation. Shared pain can unite or divide, revealing who we are under stress. If Earth is a test, suffering is one of its most powerful and revealing elements. In this view, extinction and renewal aren't accidents, but cycles of escalation. Life's history is marked by mass extinctions that reset the stage, each event clearing old systems and allowing new ones to emerge. Human civilizations echo this pattern on smaller scales. Empires rise and fall, institutions crumble and reform, ideas are lost and rediscovered. To observers, these cycles could be controlled intervals, measuring not only survival, but creativity after disaster. Even the simulation hypothesis fits here. Perhaps we inhabit a constructed environment, its physical constants deliberately set, its resets coded in, its observers hidden beyond our perception. Whether divine, extraterrestrial, or human from the future, the watchers, if they exist, may be gathering data on our adaptability, morality, and ability to cooperate on a planetary scale. The question then shifts from, are we being tested, to, what qualities matter most to those running the test? Compassion, innovation, resilience? The answers may shape the next stage of our species, guiding us toward a future we cannot yet see. Seen through this lens, Earth's history looks like a sequence of experiments, rather than a smooth progression. Catastrophes that once seemed random, ice ages, asteroid impacts, plagues, collapses of empires, take on a new shape as stress tests, each pushing life and civilization to adapt or disappear. In every cycle, some forms vanish while others transform, echoing the core question of any trial. Can you endure and evolve under pressure? The physical design of the planet seems to reinforce this pattern. Our atmosphere strikes a rare balance, thick enough to shield against radiation, thin enough to let in light. The magnetic field, generated deep in Earth's molten core, deflects solar winds that would otherwise strip the planet bare. Even our water cycle is finely tuned, existing in 3 states and circulating globally to sustain countless ecosystems. Each of these conditions acts like an exam parameter, creating stability with embedded challenges. Then come the invisible rules. Time moving forward, scarcity, vulnerability, and loss. No one escapes them. They shape behavior more effectively than any law. Limited time forces choices. Scarcity tests sharing and strategy. Physical needs level the playing field, ensuring survival is never automatic. Pain teaches boundaries, empathy, and resilience. Loss demands adaptation and reveals what we truly value. These built-in constraints operate like the fine print of a contract, unspoken but unbreakable. Society adds another layer of testing. Laws, customs, and unwritten expectations shift from culture to culture, creating a living matrix of experiments. In one place, generosity is honored. In another, aggression is rewarded. This variation could be deliberate, an array of test conditions designed to see how humans navigate conflicting systems, whether they conform, rebel, or innovate. The collision of cultures, through trade, migration, or conquest, becomes another probe, revealing how groups adapt when their rules clash. Civilization itself functions as an escalator of difficulty. Early humans faced direct survival challenges. Modern humans face abstract ones like nuclear deterrence, global climate systems, and algorithm-driven economies. This shift tests foresight, cooperation, and empathy on a planetary scale. It's no longer enough to feed your family. The test now asks whether we can feed billions without destroying the environment that sustains us. Suffering weaves through all of this as both a constant and a catalyst. It strikes unevenly, testing compassion and ingenuity. Shared hardship can create solidarity across borders, but it can also deepen division and mistrust. This dual potential, unity or fragmentation, is one of the richest variables in the entire experiment. Observers, if they exist, would watch closely here, because it's where humanity reveals its deepest instincts. Extinction and renewal act as the ultimate resets. Mass extinctions in prehistory prepared the ground for new species. Civilizational collapses prepared the ground for new social systems. These resets measure more than survival. They measure creativity under constraint. How do survivors rebuild? What values do they carry forward, and which do they abandon? This process mirrors educational cycles, where failure precedes mastery, but on a planetary scale. Even the simulation hypothesis fits naturally into this framework. If reality is coded, then resets, disasters, and improbably perfect conditions are features, not bugs. Physics constants could be programmed parameters. Randomness could be an algorithmic function to prevent predictability. Glitches, coincidences, and unexplainable phenomena could be brief glimpses of underlying code. In that sense, humanity is both participant and dataset, acting out scenarios to generate knowledge for an unseen intelligence. Yet the most revealing questions aren't about the watchers. They're about us. If we suspect life is evaluative, how do we live? Do we choose integrity when no one is watching? Do we innovate solutions to prevent suffering before it strikes, or wait until collapse forces our hand? Do we use our growing power to cooperate or to dominate? These are the decisions that may define our score, even if we never see the grade. What makes this perspective powerful is how it reframes everyday experience. The long commute, the unexpected setback, the sudden opportunity, all become more than random events. They're small questions on a sprawling exam, each with the potential to reveal character, resilience, and wisdom. Once you see life this way, you can't unsee it. Every action starts to feel like an answer you're giving to a silent question. If we imagine life as an unfolding curriculum, Earth provides the classroom, the materials, and the hidden grading system. Its vast history of evolution, disaster, and renewal resembles a series of escalating lessons designed to stretch every quality a species can develop. Rather than a single test, it's more like a multi-layered syllabus running across billions of years, with each epoch offering its own module on survival, adaptation, cooperation, and meaning. Consider how perfectly balanced, yet challenging the setting is. Distance from the sun, planetary tilt, ocean tides, stable atmosphere, magnetic shield. All these create an environment not too safe, not too hostile, but precisely in between. Life flourishes, but must fight to endure. Seasons force planning and adaptation. Natural disasters interrupt comfort zones and push ingenuity. Scarcity and vulnerability keep every living being in motion. Even the capacity for consciousness itself, our ability to reflect, question, and imagine, could be part of this design, giving us the tools to see the test, but not the power to escape it. Across cultures and centuries, humans have tried to decode this pattern. Ancient myths of weighed hearts, karmic cycles, trials of virtue, and sacred journeys all echo the same intuition: life as evaluation. These stories may have functioned as invisible steering mechanisms, encouraging cooperation and moral conduct by embedding a sense of being watched and judged. In this way, belief systems worked like self-regulating feedback loops, shaping behavior long before modern institutions existed. Civilization acts as a stress multiplier. In small tribes, stakes revolve around direct survival. In cities, stakes shift to fairness, governance, and large-scale collaboration. This progression tests whether a species can manage complexity without self-destruction. Our technological age amplifies this challenge further, turning local issues into global ones and forcing us to think on planetary timescales. Climate change, pandemics, AI ethics, nuclear proliferation, all function as high-level exam questions, demanding foresight, restraint, and unity. The hidden rules remain relentless. Time moves forward, forcing us to act without full knowledge of outcomes. Resources remain finite, testing generosity and strategy. Pain and loss mark boundaries, sharpening empathy or breeding indifference. None of these rules can be negotiated away, which makes them ideal tools for revealing authentic responses. Suffering is the most persistent instructor. It doesn't just test endurance, it shapes identity. A crisis can spark solidarity or deepen division, inspire compassion or cruelty. Every disaster becomes a branching point where individuals and societies show their true priorities. Observers, if they exist, would gain their clearest insights from these inflection moments. Extinction and renewal remain the final exams. Each mass extinction wiped clean the evolutionary slate and opened niches for new life. Each civilizational collapse removed old systems and invited fresh experiments in governance, culture, and technology. These cycles are not failures, but mechanisms for learning at scale, testing whether life and societies can bounce back stronger or more inventive after devastation. The simulation hypothesis provides a modern metaphor for all of this. If our world is coded, every reset, every coincidence, every improbable constant becomes part of an algorithm designed to measure and refine. Randomness, glitches, and unexplainable events could be intentional variables. We might be both the subjects and the data of an experiment whose scope exceeds our imagination. And yet, the real challenge is not deciphering the observers, but deciding how to live within the unknown. If life is a test, our answers are written in how we treat one another, how we handle power, how we prepare for crises, and how we imagine a future beyond ourselves. Even without a visible scoreboard, these choices accumulate into a pattern. That pattern may be the true measure, one that spans generations and civilizations rather than individual lifetimes. When seen this way, everyday life transforms from a blur of disconnected events into a coherent practice of self-revelation. Every action, kindness, neglect, courage, or hesitation, is a response to a silent prompt. The grade may never be announced, but the process shapes us regardless. This idea can feel daunting or liberating. It can unsettle or inspire. But once glimpsed, it's difficult to dismiss. When you begin to see life as an ongoing evaluation, the everyday world starts to shimmer with hidden structure. Nothing looks entirely random. The commute that frustrates you, the person who shows up at a critical moment, the unexpected loss or opportunity, all of it becomes more than coincidence. It's as if every experience is a quiet prompt, testing patience, empathy, creativity, or courage. Earth's physical conditions reinforce this sense of hidden design. Every feature, the protective magnetic field, the stable orbit, the balanced atmosphere, the cycling of water, sets a stage where life can grow, but must also struggle. This delicate balance ensures no one coasts through existence without decisions that matter. Stability gives us a chance to build. Unpredictability forces us to adapt. Together, they produce a laboratory for testing both character and innovation. History reads like a logbook of our responses. For thousands of years, civilizations have risen and fallen, each one a large-scale experiment in organizing human potential. Empires have built vast infrastructures and collapsed under their own weight. Cultures have produced philosophy, art, and technology, while failing at fairness, or sustainability. Each success and breakdown reveals patterns of resilience, hubris, and adaptation. If observers exist, they'd study these cycles for clues about what truly endures. The hidden rules never ease. Time moves forward. Loss is inevitable. Resources remain limited. These constraints produce branching choices that display our priorities. Do we hoard or share? Do we exploit or cooperate? Do we adapt systems to new conditions or cling to traditions until collapse? The answers emerge not from theory, but from lived behavior, which is why the ambiguity of the test matters. Without a clear grading system, every choice reflects authentic values, not rehearsed ones. Suffering remains the deepest metric. Hardship without warning tests, resilience and empathy. Some crises drive people to withdraw or become cruel. Others bring unexpected heroism. Shared disasters can build bridges across cultures or deepen long-standing divides. This dual potential makes suffering a perfect variable for measuring human nature. It exposes our instinctive reactions and our capacity for change. The cycles of extinction and renewal amplify this lesson. Just as mass extinctions in nature cleared space for new species, civilizational collapses clear space for new social orders. The fall of one empire can plant seeds for another's rise. This pattern resembles a stress test that repeats until the system evolves enough to pass. From a higher perspective, it's not about punishing failure, but about gathering data on how life and societies innovate after disruption. Even our myths, faiths, and philosophies may be built into the curriculum. Across cultures, people have imagined cosmic judges, karmic cycles, divine trials, and destinies to fulfill. These stories shape behavior as effectively as physical law, channeling billions of individual decisions toward cooperation, discipline, or moral conduct. Whether invented or inspired, such frameworks act like training wheels for species-wide development. Modern concepts like the simulation hypothesis translate these ancient intuitions into contemporary language. A coded reality, resets, fine-tuned constants, and invisible observers all echo old themes of hidden design and evaluation. Whether divine, alien, or human from the future, the Watchers, if they're real, might be using advanced methods to study not just individuals, but entire civilizations across time. Yet the test's real question isn't about them. It's about us. How do we behave under conditions of uncertainty? Do we rise to challenges before catastrophe forces our hand? Do we build systems that protect the vulnerable? Or do we leave resilience to chance? These questions matter, even if no observer exists, because our choices still determine our survival and legacy. Seen this way, life ceases to be a random sequence and becomes a practice of self-definition. Each choice is an answer. Each day, another opportunity to demonstrate what matters most. The score may remain hidden, but the act of choosing reshapes both individual lives and the collective trajectory of our species. This is the deep curriculum, one that transcends any single culture or lifetime and may extend into futures we cannot yet imagine. When you zoom out far enough, life on Earth resembles not just a series of challenges, but a grand experiment unfolding over eons. Mass extinctions, evolutionary leaps, collapses of empires, and rebirth of ideas are not scattered accidents, but rhythmic pulses. Each pulse clears space for something new, presses life to evolve, and probes the limits of resilience. In this way, Earth functions less like a playground and more like an arena, one that's both nurturing and relentless. The planet's architecture still looks eerily deliberate. Its molten core generates a magnetic field that shields us from deadly radiation. Its enormous moon stabilizes rotation and tides, preventing chaotic climate swings. Gas giants like Jupiter sweep up stray comets that might otherwise devastate Earth. Water circulates between ocean, land, and sky, regulating temperature and sustaining biodiversity. Each of these parameters could be random coincidence, or, if you embrace the test metaphor, the carefully tuned settings of a long experiment designed to measure adaptability, cooperation, and foresight. This test doesn't only measure biology, it measures consciousness, ethics, and creativity. Across ages, humans have sensed they were being evaluated, whether by gods, ancestors, or unseen forces. The Egyptian weighing of the heart, Confucian self-cultivation, karmic cycles, and Christian or Islamic judgment after death are all variations on the same theme. Even secular philosophies speak of life as training, growth, or self-overcoming. These ideas, repeated across cultures, might be independent discoveries of the same underlying reality, or deliberate cultural implants steering our development. Civilization becomes the upper tier of this curriculum. Small bands of hunter-gatherers tested survival skills and social cohesion. Villages tested resource sharing and leadership. Cities and nations test governance, fairness, and large-scale cooperation. Globalization tests planetary stewardship. Each stage escalates the difficulty level, just as a teacher might raise expectations once students master the basics. The hidden rules remain steady: time's arrow, scarcity, vulnerability, and loss. They shape our options without revealing their purpose. These constraints generate authentic choices, revealing priorities we might not otherwise show. How societies handle scarcity, whether they distribute resources fairly or hoard them, whether they extend empathy beyond their borders or retreat into tribalism. These decisions become a running record of humanity's moral evolution. Suffering plays the role of an uncompromising instructor. It presses individuals and cultures to grow, adapt, or fragment. Crises can inspire extraordinary compassion or brutality, pushing communities into new alignments or tearing them apart. This unpredictability makes suffering one of the richest variables in the entire experiment. By comparing responses across time and culture, observers, if they exist, would see which conditions spark cooperation, which trigger conflict, and which give rise to innovation. Extinction and renewal function as the exam's reset button. In biology, mass extinctions eliminate dominant species and allow new life to flourish. In history, civilizational collapses clear the stage for different systems of governance, economy, and belief. These cycles measure more than endurance. They measure creativity under constraint, testing whether survivors can build stronger, more adaptable frameworks from the ashes of the old. The simulation hypothesis offers a modern frame for these patterns. If reality is coded, then physics constants are simply variables in a program. Random events are deliberate perturbations, and glitches are the code's seams showing through. Mass extinctions and cultural resets become programmed intervals. Every human choice, from the most mundane to the most heroic, becomes data. This notion sounds extreme, but it elegantly explains why the universe appears fine-tuned and why chance events so often serve as turning points. Yet whether or not there are watchers, the test remains. Our actions still carry weight. We still face choices under uncertainty, still experience loss, still find meaning in struggle. The question shifts from who is grading us to how do we live with the possibility that every decision matters. This is where the concept of Earth as a test becomes practical. It invites us to treat each moment as a chance to demonstrate integrity, resilience, and compassion, even without a visible scoreboard. At this scale, everyday life becomes a laboratory for virtues we rarely practice consciously. The way you speak to a stranger, the decisions you make under stress, the patience you summon in small frustrations. These may be the true exam questions, hidden in plain sight. Taken together, they form a portrait of character more revealing than any single dramatic event. Seen this way, the purpose of the test might not be to achieve a particular outcome, but to cultivate a capacity, to create beings capable of self-awareness, empathy, and foresight, even when confronted by uncertainty. That capacity could be the real grade, not survival itself, but the kind of intelligence and morality that can flourish within complexity. As the experiment deepens, humanity finds itself in a uniquely revealing phase. For most of history, our challenges were local: survival against predators, gathering food, enduring storms, and navigating conflicts with nearby groups. But in the last few centuries, the stage has expanded to a planetary scale. Now our choices shape not only our own communities, but also the biosphere, climate, and stability of the entire Earth. This expansion transforms the test from one of individual endurance to one of collective stewardship. Our environment continues to function as both cradle and crucible. Stable orbital dynamics, the moon's stabilizing influence, and protective gas giants still guard us from cosmic catastrophes. Yet within this protective envelope, we generate our own hazards: greenhouse gases, nuclear arsenals, engineered pandemics, and algorithmic manipulation of information. In effect, the exam has entered its graduate level, where we ourselves design the next questions. If the hidden observers exist, they would now be watching whether we can manage our own power without self-destruction. The old invisible rules still apply. Time moves forward relentlessly. Resources, though vast, remain finite. Vulnerability and loss still define our lives. But now these constraints press us to act beyond instinct and beyond borders. Will we hoard or cooperate, innovate or stagnate, build global systems that anticipate catastrophe, or wait until it strikes? Each decision tests not just individuals, but entire cultures and governments. Suffering remains the lens through which our values show most clearly. Today, suffering is not limited to natural disasters or scarcity, but extends to social injustice, displacement, and the psychological toll of hyper-connected life. These new forms of hardship ask fresh questions. Can empathy scale across digital distance? Can global compassion overcome tribal reflexes? Can we recognize the shared stakes of our species quickly enough to prevent irreversible damage? Cycles of extinction and renewal are no longer distant geological events. They hover as potential futures. Climate change could redraw coastlines and displace hundreds of millions. Technological disruption could erase entire industries overnight. Biological or cyber risks could sweep through networks with unprecedented speed. Each scenario resembles a pre-programmed stress test at civilizational scale. Our response, whether reactive or proactive, reveals how far we've come in mastering foresight and collective action. Even our myths have adapted. Ancient stories of gods and cosmic judgment now coexist with science fiction about simulations, artificial intelligence, and interstellar watchers. These modern myths echo the same archetypes: hidden overseers, moral or behavioral evaluations, and dramatic resets. In a sense, we've updated the language of the test, but kept its structure intact, showing that the intuition of being evaluated persists even in a secular technological age. Civilization itself has become a self-modifying curriculum. We design systems, educational, legal, financial, digital, that feed back into our behavior and shape new generations. Algorithms now mediate attention and influence decisions at scale, acting as invisible teachers with no clear author. This adds another layer to the exam. How do we govern the tools that govern us? Do we align technology with human well-being, or allow it to amplify division and exploitation? At the core of this phase lies a deeper question. If we suspect life is a test, will that knowledge change our behavior? Awareness of being evaluated can distort results, yet it can also inspire conscious growth. Perhaps the test includes this meta-level prompt. What do you do once you realize you're being tested? Do you seek to manipulate the system, retreat into cynicism, or strive to embody your highest values, despite uncertainty? Seen from this angle, humanity stands on a threshold. We have the capacity to annihilate ourselves or to extend life beyond our planet, to deepen inequality or to share abundance, to weaponize knowledge or to use it for healing and exploration. Each path represents a different answer to the same unspoken questions. Ultimately, the test may not be about passing or failing, but about transformation. By confronting challenges of increasing complexity, we refine not only our technology, but our empathy, our imagination, and our sense of interconnectedness. In this view, the real outcome isn't survival, but awakening. The emergence of a consciousness capable of caring for itself and its environment on a scale far larger than individual or tribal identity. In the end, whether Earth is literally a test or simply feels like one, the implications converge. Our choices matter. Every generation writes a new chapter. Every culture adds its perspective. Every individual offers a piece of the answer. And together, perhaps without knowing, we are shaping the final pattern of the experiment. If we look at the grand sweep of Earth's history, the test seems to be converging on a single theme: self-awareness at scale. The planet has nurtured countless forms of life, each more complex than the last, each cycle of extinction and renewal, producing creatures with new abilities to sense, adapt, and cooperate. Humanity may be the latest, and not necessarily the last, stage of this progression. Our unique capacity to reflect on our own situation, to imagine futures, and to act intentionally may itself be the primary focus of the exam. Everything we've learned about the environment suggests a deliberate equilibrium between stability and challenge. Earth's orbit and tilt provide predictable seasons, but not perfect comfort. The moon stabilizes rotation, but also stirs tides. Gas giants protect us from constant bombardment, yet leave enough threats to demand vigilance. Scarcity drives invention, but limits indulgence. Even consciousness, that double-edged tool, grants insight, but also anxiety. Each feature seems like a variable in a study of resilience, cooperation, and foresight. Across cultures and time, our collective stories mirror this tension. Ancient civilizations spoke of cosmic judges, karmic cycles, and sacred tests. Modern societies speak of simulations, multiverses, and artificial intelligence. Both ancient and modern frameworks share the same blueprint: unseen observers, rules that feel both strict and obscure, and dramatic resets that reframe everything. These repeated motifs may indicate not coincidence, but a persistent archetype, our intuitive grasp of being evaluated. Civilization itself has become a feedback loop. Our tools create new dilemmas faster than we can solve them. Algorithms that maximize attention distort truth. Global markets amplify inequality. Technology that could heal the planet also threatens to destabilize it. In effect, we've built a meta-test where our own inventions generate the next wave of questions. If the hidden observers exist, they'd now be watching whether we can learn not just to solve problems, but to anticipate and prevent them. The invisible rules still frame every decision. Time marches forward. Resources remain finite. Vulnerability and loss define experience. Yet, at our current scale, these rules demand planetary thinking. Do we extract short-term gains or preserve long-term stability? Do we weaponize knowledge or share it for collective benefit? Do we treat suffering as background noise or as a call to action? Each choice writes data into the unfolding record of our species. Suffering remains the deepest crucible. In the 21st century, it takes new forms. Climate disasters, refugee crises, digital isolation, cultural polarization. These challenges test whether empathy can transcend national and ideological boundaries. Can billions of people recognize their shared fate quickly enough to avert self-inflicted catastrophes? Or will tribal instincts and short-term incentives overpower long-term survival? Cycles of extinction and renewal no longer belong only to prehistory. They loom as plausible futures. Entire ecosystems may collapse within decades. Technological missteps could cascade into global crises. These potential resets resemble the exam's ultimate questions. Can we foresee danger and act collectively, or will we wait until collapse forces the reset? In this phase, prevention itself becomes a measure of maturity. Our myths and sciences now point toward the same possibility. We are inside a system far larger than ourselves, and the stakes extend beyond individual lifetimes. Whether the watchers are divine, extraterrestrial, future humans, or an emergent AI we have yet to meet, the test measures qualities that can only be revealed under uncertainty. Qualities like compassion, foresight, creativity, and courage. But the ultimate question is how we choose to live with this awareness. If life is a test, will we try to game the system, withdraw into nihilism, or rise to embody our highest values? Perhaps the exam includes this meta-level prompt. Once you suspect you're being evaluated, do you change your behavior to win points? Or do you become authentically better because it's the right thing to do? In this sense, the test may not be about passing or failing at all. It may be about creating beings who can face complexity and uncertainty without losing empathy or imagination. It may be about seeing whether we can grow beyond survival into stewardship, beyond tribalism into planetary consciousness, beyond fear into wisdom. Seen this way, every day becomes a chance to participate in shaping the outcome. Every act of kindness, every invention, every policy, and every small decision contributes to the pattern. Whether or not there's an observer, these choices build the world our descendants will inherit. That, perhaps, is the truest score of all. The legacy we leave behind in systems, stories, and possibilities we create. When we widen our lens to the full arc of Earth and human history, a pattern emerges that is hard to ignore. Balance and disruption, stability and upheaval, scarcity and abundance, cooperation and conflict. Each polarity functions like a paired question on a cosmic exam. How do you act when resources flow freely? How do you act when they dry up? How do you lead in peace, and how in crisis? How do you treat strangers when you need nothing from them, and how when your survival depends on them? This framework suggests that every feature of our existence, physical, social, and psychological, may be calibrated to reveal our priorities. The planet's fine-tuned conditions set the stage. Time's arrow and mortality ensure urgency. Scarcity demands strategy and empathy. Suffering tests our response to hardship. Diversity of cultures and conditions ensures a full spectrum of behaviors to study. Every element creates a complex interlocking curriculum for the development of conscious beings. Across civilizations, The same archetypes resurface: judgment after death, cosmic cycles, chosen people, hidden overseers, moral reckonings. Ancient Egyptians weighed the heart. Greeks spoke of testing the soul through virtue. Confucians emphasized self-cultivation, and Hindu-Buddhist traditions described karma and rebirth. Today's secular cultures invoke simulation theory, parallel universes, and evolutionary stress tests. The language changes, but the underlying intuition persists. Life is evaluative, and someone or something may be keeping track. Civilization functions as a stress amplifier. We create technologies that both solve and multiply problems, design systems that both liberate and oppress, and build networks that can share knowledge or misinformation at planetary speed. This self-made pressure cooker now tests our ability to cooperate at scales never before required. Can empathy and foresight extend beyond tribe and nation to encompass species and biosphere? Can we anticipate and prevent crises rather than merely reacting after collapse? These are the graduate-level questions of the exam. Suffering remains the crucible in which our values are exposed. Modern hardship includes not just famine and war, but climate instability, mass migration, economic precarity, and digital manipulation. These forms of suffering test whether we can preserve empathy across distance, cultural divides, and algorithmically reinforced echo chambers. They reveal whether kindness can scale or whether fear and anger will dominate. Cycles of extinction and renewal now hover as near-term possibilities rather than distant history. Our collective choices about energy, technology, and governance could avert catastrophic resets or trigger them. In this sense, prevention itself becomes part of the test. Can a species learn to break the cycle before collapse forces another round of rebuilding? This demands foresight, cooperation, and sacrifice, qualities that are difficult to measure without real stakes. Our myths and scientific models converge on the same image: Earth as a bounded system with invisible rules, a stage for self-aware beings to prove or transform themselves. Whether the hidden observers are gods, aliens, future humans, or none of the above, the test unfolds regardless. The structure of reality itself, its constants, its randomness, its vulnerability, ensures that every action carries weight and every outcome reveals something about our collective character. But perhaps the most profound aspect of the test is its mirror effect. Even without external observers, thinking of life as an evaluation changes how we live. It invites us to act as though every decision matters, to see obstacles as opportunities to demonstrate courage, and to measure success not just by outcomes, but by integrity under uncertainty. This meta-level awareness may be the true goal, a consciousness capable of choosing meaning even when no meaning is guaranteed. Ultimately, Earth's test may not be about passing or failing in a conventional sense, but about the emergence of beings who can transcend fear, tribalism, and short-term thinking. Beings who can imagine a future beyond themselves and act accordingly. If we achieve that, the observers, if they exist, will have their answer. And if no one is watching, we still will have created a civilization worthy of enduring, simply by choosing to live as though the test is real. At this stage of the journey, the test appears less like a hidden examination and more like a mirror. Every challenge reflects our own priorities back to us. As our influence expands, the questions grow more complex. Can we act with foresight before disaster strikes? Can we value long-term stability over short-term gain? Can we grow a sense of identity larger than tribe, nation, or even species? These are no longer theoretical exercises. They're real choices, whose outcomes shape the biosphere and the fate of future generations. Earth's conditions remain strikingly deliberate: the stable orbit, the protective magnetic field, the moon's gravitational guidance, and the water cycle that sustains life. These parameters form the foundation of a planetary laboratory, built to nurture complexity while testing adaptability. Stability allows civilizations to flourish. Unpredictable pressures demand innovation. Together they form a system that reveals our strengths and weaknesses at scale. Our cultural narratives, ancient and modern, encode these same lessons. From Egyptian scales of judgment to Hindu cycles of rebirth, from Confucian cultivation to Islamic and Christian trials of faith, and now to simulation theory and cosmic AI overseers, humans repeatedly imagine themselves being evaluated. This persistent intuition may be more than a metaphor. It may be the faint recognition of a deeper structure we're embedded in. Civilization has evolved into a self-sustaining stress test. Technologies emerge faster than moral frameworks to guide them. Algorithms shape information flows beyond any single authority's control. Global supply chains link distant regions so tightly that a shock in one place ripples across continents. These conditions test not just technical skill, but ethical maturity. Will we use our power to alleviate suffering or magnify it? Will we share resources equitably or entrench inequality? The invisible rules never relax. Time moves forward, resources remain finite, vulnerability and loss persist. But now these rules apply at a planetary scale, pressing us to develop new forms of governance, empathy, and imagination. If observers exist, they would be watching whether we can evolve our institutions as rapidly as our tools, whether we can prevent harm before it cascades, and whether we can recognize our shared fate despite cultural, economic, and ideological divides. Suffering continues to reveal our values. Climate disruption, pandemics, forced migration, and algorithmically fueled polarization all test whether empathy can stretch across billions. Can we respond to suffering not as isolated incidents, but as systemic prompts urging us to redesign our systems? Can compassion scale at the same speed as technology? These questions, more than any exam paper, measure our readiness for the future. Extinction and renewal are now within our control. We can destroy ecosystems or restore them, collapse institutions or reinvent them, unleash weapons or dismantle them. In this phase, prevention becomes a marker of maturity. Breaking the cycle voluntarily, choosing foresight over catastrophe, may be the exam's highest level. If we can learn to reset ourselves intentionally, rather than through collapse, we demonstrate a quality no previous civilization has shown at scale. Modern myths echo this possibility. Whether framed as simulation hypothesis, cosmic observers, or ancestral spirits watching from beyond time, they all ask the same thing. What do we do when we realize the stakes? Do we act out of fear or out of wisdom? Do we manipulate appearances to earn points, or do we genuinely evolve? This meta-question could be the final hidden prompt of the test. Ultimately, the purpose may not be to pass, but to awaken, to create beings who choose integrity, creativity, and empathy without needing external rewards or punishments. In that sense, the test succeeds when we no longer need the test. We become self-regulating, self-aware participants in the unfolding story of life, capable of shaping reality rather than simply enduring it. Even if no watchers exist, this framework still transforms how we live. It encourages us to see every choice as consequential, every hardship as an opportunity to reveal our character, and every interaction as a chance to practice the qualities we want to embody. In that way, the test becomes not a threat, but a guide, steering us toward a civilization that can survive, adapt, and flourish on its own terms. When we look beyond our immediate crises and daily routines, a larger horizon comes into view. If Earth is a test, its purpose may be to prepare us for challenges far greater than we've yet faced. Perhaps the real measure isn't simply how we manage our own planet, but how we carry our values into environments we can't yet imagine. Whether on other worlds, in digital realms, or in entirely new forms of existence. This idea reframes our present struggles as training grounds for a future that transcends our current limits. The planet's deliberate seeming conditions continue to set the stage. Stable orbital dynamics, balanced atmosphere, tectonic renewal, and the presence of liquid water create a long-term laboratory where life can not only arise, but iterate through mistakes. Catastrophes, whether natural or self-inflicted, act like resets, forcing adaptation and rethinking. This setup echoes the way education itself works: lessons, tests, feedback, and the chance to try again. Our stories have always hinted at this trajectory. Myths of ascension, apotheosis, and journeys beyond Earth echo in today's visions of space travel, artificial intelligence, and post-human futures. Ancient cultures imagined souls weighed after death or reborn into new lives. Modern thinkers speculate about uploading consciousness or living inside simulations. Both paradigms point to the same underlying question: can consciousness endure change and still recognize itself? Civilization now tests us at planetary scale. Our technologies interlink billions of people, turning local choices into global ripples. We're asked not just to survive, but to govern complexity, anticipate long-term consequences, and balance freedom with responsibility. This is the highest level of difficulty we've yet encountered. If observers exist, they would be watching whether we can integrate knowledge, empathy, and foresight quickly enough to avoid self-inflicted collapse. The hidden rules persist. Time moves forward. Resources remain finite. Loss and vulnerability shape our decisions. But at this level, these rules become invitations to develop entirely new capabilities. We must imagine institutions that can adapt faster than crises unfold, cultures that reward long-term thinking, and technologies aligned with collective well-being rather than narrow profit or power. Each experiment we run in governance, science, and ethics is like another question on the exam. Suffering continues to be our sharpest teacher. It now appears not only in natural disasters, but in social fragmentation, digital echo chambers, and mental health crises born of hyper-connected life. These stressors test whether empathy can extend through invisible networks, whether solidarity can survive distance and anonymity, and whether humanity can retain its sense of shared destiny amid constant distraction. Extinction and renewal remain both threat and opportunity. We could push ecosystems past tipping points or restore them to resilience. We could let inequality hollow out societies or invest in shared prosperity. We could treat new technologies as weapons or as bridges. Each decision signals whether we're ready to guide our own evolution rather than being guided by catastrophe. Modern myths about simulation and hidden observers reflect an unconscious grasp of this moment. Even if no literal programmers exist, we behave as though we sense a higher scrutiny, as though each action writes code for a future civilization. In a sense, we're programming ourselves, encoding our values into the systems and environments that will outlast us. The ultimate lesson may be that the test's true observer is us, our future selves, our descendants, or the collective memory of humanity. By acting as though our choices matter beyond our lifetimes, we create a feedback loop of responsibility and foresight. Whether or not anyone out there is grading us, we become our own evaluators, our own teachers, our own examiners. At this horizon, the goal is no longer merely to pass, but to evolve into beings who choose integrity, foresight, and creativity as their default. This is the endgame implied by every myth of judgment and every modern speculation about simulation. The exam ends not when we're told it's over, but when we no longer need external testing to act with wisdom. Seen this way, the test isn't a cage, but a ladder. Each rung, scarcity, suffering, cooperation, collapse, renewal, lifts us toward greater self-awareness. The point isn't to punish, but to prepare. And in preparing, we begin to glimpse the possibility of a civilization that acts consciously, shaping reality, rather than simply reacting to it. At this deepest level, the very distinction between being tested and being free begins to blur. A species that has internalized the test no longer waits for evaluation. It evaluates itself. It no longer treats crises as punishments, but as prompts to grow. In this view, the goal of Earth's long curriculum may be to transform conscious beings into their own observers, capable of shaping reality deliberately rather than being shaped unconsciously. The planet's architecture still acts as a training ground, stable enough to nurture life, unstable enough to demand vigilance. Orbital precision, tectonic renewal, a dynamic climate, all create a feedback loop of challenge and support. Every variable teaches a skill: patience, cooperation, ingenuity, foresight. Over billions of years, this loop produces organisms and eventually cultures capable of thinking beyond instinct. Our myths, old and new, capture this gradual ascent. Tales of sacred trials, spiritual awakenings, and journeys beyond death echo today in narratives of singularities, spacefaring civilizations, and emergent artificial minds. These stories sketch the same archetypal arc: beings tested, beings transformed, beings ascending to become caretakers rather than mere participants. Whether literal or symbolic, the pattern offers a roadmap for the species at large. Civilization now stands at a precipice where self-awareness and power converge. We've built global systems capable of staggering creativity and destruction. We've created technologies that amplify both empathy and manipulation, resilience and fragility. The challenge is no longer only to survive, but to integrate moral intelligence with technical capability. This is the phase where the exam's difficulty peaks, demanding foresight and humility at a scale never before required. The invisible rules remain constant: time, scarcity, vulnerability, and loss. But at this stage, they can be reinterpreted. Time's urgency becomes motivation for planning. Scarcity becomes an incentive for innovation and sharing rather than hoarding. Vulnerability becomes the foundation for empathy. Loss becomes the teacher of resilience and gratitude. In this reframing, the rules stop feeling like traps and start functioning as guides. Suffering continues to test our deepest values. It shows up in floods, wildfires, political upheaval, mental health crises, and mass displacement. Yet even as it wounds, it knits connections among those who respond with compassion. Each disaster becomes a branching point. Do we isolate or unite, exploit or protect, despair or innovate? These choices reveal the shape of the future more clearly than any blueprint or ideology. Extinction and renewal now hover as choices rather than inevitabilities. We can choose to collapse by ignoring warning signs, or choose to evolve by acting early. We can repeat the old cycles or break them. Preventing collapse voluntarily, by changing consumption, governance, and values, may be the ultimate demonstration of maturity. It's a harder path because it demands acting before pain forces change, but it's also the clearest sign that we've absorbed the lesson. Our modern myths of simulation and cosmic oversight may be training tools themselves, cultural simulations that prepare us for a future where we must make civilization-wide decisions without direct supervision. Whether or not any programmers exist, we behave as though someone is watching, and that belief can nudge us toward more responsible action. At this point, the test's real observer may be the collective human mind, emerging from billions of interactions. Every story we tell, every policy we enact, every invention we deploy, shapes a network of consciousness larger than any individual. In a way, the test grades itself, evolving a civilization that reflects its own deepest values back to itself. The final shift occurs when we no longer see ourselves as test takers, but as co-creators. The classroom becomes a workshop. The prompts become collaborations. We stop asking, "What do they want from us?" and start asking, "What do we want to build?" This is the point at which evaluation and freedom converge, when integrity, foresight, and empathy become default modes of existence rather than aspirational goals. Seen this way, Earth is not a trap but a forge. The friction of scarcity, the heat of suffering, the pressure of complexity, all serve to refine consciousness into something stronger, subtler, and more capable of stewardship. The real test may be to discover that we've been shaping ourselves all along. At this furthest stage, the metaphor of the test begins to dissolve into something more expansive. Instead of a one-way evaluation, reality starts to look like an invitation to collaborate. Each difficulty we have endured, each cycle of collapse and renewal, has trained us to recognize patterns, anticipate consequences, and care for systems larger than ourselves. Now those same skills allow us to become designers of our own conditions. Earth's finely balanced conditions continue to serve as a reference model. Stable orbit and climate demonstrate how equilibrium sustains life. Tectonic activity and meteor impacts show how disruption spurs evolution. This combination of predictability and shock becomes a template for building resilient systems beyond our planet, whether in off-world colonies, digital environments, or entirely new modes of existence. The skills we have learned here, cooperation, foresight, adaptability, become exportable. Our myths foreshadow this moment. Heroes in ancient epics don't just survive trials. They return with new wisdom, tools, or boons for their people. Likewise, humanity may be reaching the stage where the point is not to pass an exam, but to bring back knowledge that allows us to create more conscious, equitable, and enduring worlds. We become the mythic figure returning from the underworld with gifts for the living. Civilization now functions as a prototype for future stewardship. Cities, networks, and global institutions serve as laboratories for testing how complex systems behave under stress. By studying our own successes and failures, we gain insights into how to design better habitats, economies, and cultures. This is the moment where we stop merely reacting to events and start applying lessons to shape events. The hidden rules, time, scarcity, vulnerability, and loss, remain as teachers, but also as design principles. We can use them intentionally. Time constraints to encourage focus and innovation, resource limits to foster efficiency and sharing, vulnerability to cultivate empathy, and the experience of loss to build resilience into systems from the start. By weaving these principles consciously into our designs, we transform the very forces that once tested us. Suffering, too, shifts its role. Instead of being the unavoidable crucible of learning, it becomes a signal of where systems need adjustment. As we mature, we can design structures that reduce unnecessary suffering while preserving challenge and growth. This marks a profound transition, from being shaped by pain to shaping the conditions that create or alleviate pain. Extinction and renewal become creative choices. We can intentionally retire harmful practices, obsolete technologies, or outdated institutions, making room for new ones without catastrophic collapse. This voluntary renewal demonstrates a level of foresight and responsibility no previous civilization has achieved. It's the difference between a forced reset and an intentional evolution. Our contemporary myths of simulation and cosmic oversight also evolve. Instead of imagining ourselves as lab rats or players in someone else's game, we begin to see ourselves as co-developers of reality. Even if no literal programmers exist, we behave as though we are writing the next version of the program, encoding our values into laws, infrastructures, algorithms, and cultural narratives that will guide generations to come. At this point, the true observer may not be hidden gods or distant aliens, but the emergent collective consciousness of humanity itself. Each decision becomes a line of code in the operating system of our shared future. By acting as if everything matters, we build a civilization that reflects our highest values. This feedback loop becomes self-sustaining, turning evaluation into evolution. Ultimately, the test may have been designed not to measure us, but to teach us how to design ourselves. Every constraint, every hardship, every unknown becomes raw material for creativity. We discover that we can craft meaning from uncertainty, stewardship from survival, and compassion from vulnerability. This discovery may be the moment the exam ends, not with a grade, but with a new capacity, the ability to create worlds that test and nurture consciousness in turn. Seen this way, Earth is both cradle and crucible, both classroom and launchpad. Its conditions have forged beings who can imagine futures beyond it, and in doing so, it may have fulfilled its purpose, not to trap us in an endless evaluation, but to prepare us to become co-creators of reality itself. At the outer edge of this journey, the test stops feeling like something imposed from outside and starts looking like a template we ourselves can apply. All of the elements that once seemed like constraints, scarcity, time, vulnerability, loss, become design tools we can consciously use to build healthier, more resilient systems. What began as survival training evolves into stewardship training, and stewardship training evolves into world building. Earth's delicately balanced conditions continue to teach this lesson. Its stable orbit, renewing climate systems, and dynamic geological cycles show how stability and disruption together create resilience. Just as tectonic pressure produces mountains, social and environmental pressure produces new ideas, cultures, and technologies. By understanding this interplay, we can replicate it in other contexts, whether designing habitats in space, digital networks, or community institutions on Earth. Across myths and histories, the figure who passes through trial emerges transformed and then teaches others. In a collective sense, humanity now stands in that archetypal moment. Having endured millennia of trial and error, we can return to the village of our species, carrying tools for intentional design, systems thinking, empathy at scale, and technological power. These tools give us the chance to transform the test into a learning platform for future generations. Civilization itself has become a living experiment, whose results feed directly into the next iteration. We've built networks that amplify human connection, but also magnify misinformation. We've unlocked energy sources that power prosperity, but also threaten the climate. Each of these dynamics gives us real-time feedback. By treating feedback as data rather than punishment, we learn to refine our systems before collapse forces a reset. The invisible rules, time, scarcity, vulnerability, and loss, still define the playing field, but also hint at how to engineer resilience. Time constraints drive innovation and focus. Resource limits encourage efficiency and sharing. Vulnerability deepens empathy and mutual aid. Loss teaches redundancy and the importance of memory. When we consciously incorporate these principles, we build systems robust enough to handle shocks without catastrophic failure. Suffering, too, can be reframed. In an immature system, it arrives as unavoidable pain. In a mature system, it becomes a diagnostic signal, a sign that conditions are misaligned and need redesign. This shift allows us to reduce unnecessary harm while preserving healthy challenge. It marks the transition from being shaped by crisis to shaping conditions proactively. Extinction and renewal become deliberate processes. We can retire outdated institutions before they collapse, phase out destructive technologies before they backfire, and cultivate cultural narratives that prepare people for change rather than denying it. This voluntary renewal signals the highest maturity, choosing transformation without being forced by disaster. Modern myths about simulations, hidden observers, and cosmic oversight now serve as metaphors for self-reflection. Even if no literal programmers exist, the act of imagining one makes us more conscious of our own design choices. We begin to see ourselves not as subjects in a lab, but as co-architects of reality. Every law passed, every algorithm written, every story told becomes a line of code in the operating system of our shared future. At this stage, the true observer is not an external entity, but our collective memory and the generations who come after. Acting as though we're accountable to them, because we are, gives meaning to our decisions now. It closes the loop. We become the test, the testers, and the beneficiaries of the learning process all at once. Seen this way, Earth ceases to be only a classroom and becomes a launch pad. The skills learned here, resilience, empathy, foresight, creativity, equip us to create environments beyond Earth that are not merely habitable, but consciously designed for thriving. The test was never about staying in one place. It was about preparing to carry values into the unknown. At this furthest edge of the narrative, the test becomes indistinguishable from evolution itself. Everything that once seemed like an obstacle, storms, scarcity, social conflict, uncertainty, has acted as a sculptor, shaping humanity's mental, moral, and technological muscles. We stand now at a threshold where we can choose how we will apply those muscles. The question is no longer just whether we will survive, but what kind of civilization we will consciously build. Earth's carefully balanced conditions have been both cradle and crucible. Stable orbital dynamics, the moon's guiding pull, the atmospheric shield, the cycles of ice and warmth, all created a laboratory where life could learn through repeated trials. Each reset pressed a new lesson. Each hardship forged new capacities. By enduring, innovating, and cooperating, we have built a species capable of contemplating its own trajectory. Our myths anticipated this moment. In the hero's journey, the protagonist returns from the underworld or the mountain with gifts for the tribe. In religious narratives, the soul returns to a higher state of grace after trials. In modern science fiction, civilizations graduate from planetary adolescence into cosmic adulthood. All of these images converge here. Humanity, on the verge of moving from student to steward, from test-taker to co-creator. Civilization now functions as a workshop for designing the future. We are learning to integrate ecology with economy, technology with ethics, local action with global consequence. This integration may be the true final exam, not a catastrophic trial, but a series of conscious decisions made before disaster forces our hand. If we can manage this, we demonstrate the ability to evolve voluntarily rather than under compulsion. The invisible rules, time, scarcity, vulnerability, and loss, remain embedded in everything, but can be used as design principles. Time's urgency teaches planning and humility. Scarcity fosters innovation and gratitude. Vulnerability deepens empathy and interdependence. Loss underscores the importance of redundancy, memory, and care. By weaving these principles into our institutions and technologies, we create systems resilient enough to thrive under pressure. Suffering can now be treated as a signal rather than an inevitability. Instead of waiting for pain to teach lessons, we can use feedback, data, and foresight to identify misalignments early. We can design environments that challenge without breaking, that teach without traumatizing. This marks the evolution from reactive survival to proactive stewardship. Extinction and renewal become conscious cycles. We can intentionally phase out harmful practices, sunset outdated technologies, and refresh cultural narratives without societal collapse. This voluntary renewal reflects a level of maturity no previous civilization has achieved at scale. It is the clearest proof that the lessons of the test have been learned. Our myths about simulation and hidden observers also evolve. Instead of imagining ourselves under surveillance, we see ourselves as authors of the next iteration of reality. Every policy, story, and technology becomes a seed for future generations, encoding values and possibilities into the frameworks they will inherit. In this way, we shift from being data to becoming designers, from being subjects to being sovereign. At this point, the real observer is the network of consciousness we create, our descendants, our collective memory, and the living systems that outlast us. Acting as though we are accountable to them, because we are, gives meaning to every decision. It closes the loop of the test. We are no longer waiting for an external grade. We are writing our own report card in the world we leave behind. Seen this way, the test has always been about transformation. It began with survival and ends with stewardship. It began with adaptation and ends with creation. It began with being shaped by forces we could not control and ends with shaping those forces for the benefit of all life. This is not the conclusion of a classroom exercise, but the opening of a new chapter in cosmic participation. Earth, then, is not only a test we have taken, but a teacher we carry forward. The resilience, empathy, foresight, and creativity it has fostered in us are not just survival traits. They are the building blocks of a civilization capable of caring for worlds beyond our own. In that sense, we are not leaving the test. We are becoming its stewards, able to replicate its lessons wherever consciousness may go. At this point in the arc, the story of the test stretches far beyond the boundaries of Earth itself. What began as an implicit curriculum in survival and cooperation has matured into an explicit practice of stewardship and creativity. Humanity is no longer simply reacting to challenges, but beginning to choose them, designing the conditions under which growth, fairness, and resilience can flourish. Earth's own blueprint still guides us. Stable orbital mechanics, atmospheric renewal, and cycles of disturbance and calm provide a model for systems that last. Just as natural processes recycle resources and maintain balance over millennia, our social and technological systems can be designed to renew themselves, distributing both risk and reward over time. Instead of clinging to permanence, we can embrace adaptive cycles as the rhythm of life. Across cultures, the ancient archetype of the hero who returns from trial with wisdom now applies to our species as a whole. We are gathering the lessons of thousands of years of hardship, invention, and moral struggle, and preparing to carry them into new domains. Whether we establish settlements on other planets, build immersive digital worlds, or cultivate new forms of collective intelligence, the skills learned here remain our most valuable export. Civilization itself becomes a seed for new worlds. Every institution, technology, and story contains implicit values. By curating those values carefully, embedding empathy, foresight, and resilience into our code, our policies, and our myths, we ensure that future systems inherit the lessons we've paid for with effort and suffering. In this way, the test's greatest gift is the ability to replicate learning without replicating trauma. The invisible rules, time, scarcity, vulnerability, and loss, still shape everything, but now also inform our designs. Time constraints help us focus. Resource limits push us toward efficiency and fairness. Vulnerability deepens compassion. Loss teaches memory and humility. By understanding these principles as ingredients rather than obstacles, we can build structures that challenge and support in balance. Suffering begins to transform from a blunt instrument into a fine-grained signal. Data, empathy, and foresight allow us to identify where harm accumulates and intervene early. We can design challenges that build character without inflicting unnecessary pain. This transition from reactive to proactive care marks a civilization that has truly internalized the test. Extinction and renewal can now be chosen deliberately. We can retire harmful practices before collapse forces our hand, refresh cultural narratives before they stagnate, and evolve governance systems before crises overwhelm them. This voluntary renewal signals a species that has learned to anticipate change rather than fear it. Our modern myths of simulation and cosmic oversight evolve as well. Instead of seeing ourselves as watched from above, we begin to see ourselves as watchful custodians of the conditions we create. Each decision about energy, equity, technology, and culture becomes a message to the future, a line of code in the operating system of the worlds yet to come. In this frame, the real observer is not hidden, but emergent. Our collective descendants, the living systems that survive us, the continuity of consciousness stretching forward in time. Acting with accountability to them gives meaning to our choices now, creating a feedback loop of responsibility that stretches beyond lifetimes. Seen this way, the test was never meant to end, but to transform. We pass not by escaping it, but by becoming its living expression, designing environments that nurture growth, justice, and creativity as naturally as Earth nurtured us. We cease to be test takers and become world builders, stewards of consciousness, and partners in an unfolding cosmos. Earth thus reveals itself not as a closed exam, but as an opening question. How far can empathy stretch? How deeply can foresight guide action? How beautifully can intelligence and care weave together across time and space? Our answers will be written not on paper, but in the living fabric of reality. And so, our journey through this idea reaches its quiet conclusion. From the first moment life stirred in the oceans to the dawn of civilizations and the modern era of planetary challenges, Earth has been both cradle and crucible. Every cycle of birth and collapse, every hardship and discovery, every question and answer has shaped us into beings capable of reflection, empathy, and imagination. If life on Earth is indeed a test, then its greatest achievement is not the score, but the transformation it makes possible. We began as creatures struggling for survival and have become a species capable of looking inward and outward at once, able to imagine futures, to weigh our impact, and to design our own evolution. We are no longer only students. We are the emerging stewards of the classroom itself. Perhaps there are no hidden observers. Perhaps the only witness to our choices is the living network of consciousness we create across generations. Yet even without cosmic examiners, the test remains meaningful. Acting as though our decisions matter, because they do, gives shape and purpose to our lives. Every kindness, every innovation, every act of restraint or generosity writes a new line in the story of humanity. As you sit with these ideas, remember that the test, if it exists, isn't designed to break you, but to reveal you. It invites you to meet each moment with integrity, curiosity, and care. You don't need to have every answer. You only need to show up fully and respond as authentically as you can. In doing so, you already pass the most important question the universe can ask. Who will you choose to be? Thank you for joining this reflection with Journey Through Time. If you found insight or calm in this exploration, consider carrying its spirit into your own life, into small daily choices and long-term visions alike. Our shared future is written not by chance, but by the patterns we create together. May this closing moment be both an ending and a beginning. The classroom of Earth is still open, the questions still unfolding, the possibilities still limitless. And somewhere, whether in the stars or in the quiet corners of our own hearts, the next chapter waits for us to write it.